especially with their Revenge of the Sith. I mean, there's some absolutely captivating emotional moments there.
The Force Awakens, I would say, is the best of the three.
Unlike you, I actually loved The Last Jedi.
It's inconsistent with the character that we know.
Hey guys, welcome back to Star Wars Timeline. In this podcast, we'll cover Peter's work on this Specialized Edition and his third iteration of Return of the Jedi. We're gonna cover the entire Disney era Star Wars in retrospect, from The Force Awakens all the way to Acolyte. We'll also talk about topics such as Star Wars fatigue and how to fight it. Hopefully, guys, we'll have interesting remedies for you. Peter, it's been over a year since the last time we talked. How have you been, man? What's new on your end? Tell us.
Not much actually. I mean, I moved house in between, but everything's going great for me.
Have you been checking out any movies, watching shows, maybe pick up a latest interesting book?
Not Star Wars really.
Yeah. No, you know what? It's one of the things that I think will be interesting for us to talk about is, what do you do when you move away from Star Wars? You don't have the passion for it anymore. Like, is that it? It's over? How do we, come through it? Maybe there's something more interesting than that. Lately I've been checking out some of the Warhammer 40,000. It's been quite interesting. But anyway, guys, let's dive right into it. And of course, if you enjoy this podcast, please support us. Please go check out Harmy's channel. We'll include all the links in the video description below. Leave your likes, leave your comments. Tell us, what would you guys like to hear from us next? Hopefully we'll have Peter on soon. Again, we'll have some interesting stuff to cover. But first of all, Peter, congratulations on the Star Wars Specialized Edition, The Return of the Jedi 4K 3.0. Please briefly just tell some of the fans who are new here, who are not very familiar with your projects, what are you commonly known for in the Star Wars community?
Yeah, well, so I'm the creator of the so-called Despecialized editions. It's basically the original name of the altered versions of the original Star Wars trilogy was the Special Edition. And I take the Special Edition and I despecialize it, taking out all the stuff that's been altered and replacing it with the original stuff. So that's how my project differs from projects like 4K77,
right,
which actually take full original prints and scan them. I actually take the Blu-rays of the special editions and then only replace the parts that were changed. So I'm trying to keep the movie at the best possible quality that can be achieved using the official releases plus the fan releases.
And as far as I know, I've been following your website for over a decade, I think. You're one of the first or earlier Star Wars fans who took this undertaking and said, you know what? We have the specialized editions. If you want to check it out, you have streaming services, you have Blu-ray options, but fans don't have a lot of opportunity to watch the films in their unaltered state. Why do you think this is important and current with fans today?
Well, for one, this is just my personal opinion, but it's shared by many, many, many other fans. It's just the original cuts are just better.
Right.
But that's a question of preference. I totally get if someone likes the special editions better. They're like touched up for the modern audiences. Although from my point of view, like the CGI that's been added to the special edition is actually more distracting than the original effects, even though some of them could be considered bad today. But those that were actually good were so groundbreaking that it's just such a pity to lose them. And of course, if there is no official release of the original versions, they are, for all intents and purposes, lost.
Right.
The best quality release we ever got was DVD that was actually sourced from a Laserdisc master. So,
right, I used to own them too. I remember.
Very, very low quality by today's standards. And And I've seen some, documentaries talking about Star Wars and how
Hmm.
they did the original effects. And in the background, you see the 1997 or later CGI
Hmm.
that replaced the original effects. And that, I think that's,
It's quite jarring, to be honest with you.
yeah,
It's, I've
yeah.
an opinion where I grew up with the originals in the 80s, watching VHS tapes. You and I, during our first meeting when we started with our first podcast, we talked about how we used to watch Star Wars back in the day. But I'll be frank with you, I was late teens in 1997 watching the special editions. And just like yourself, while some of the CGI didn't land for me, like I didn't like it, some of the special effects I actually enjoyed. I thought the remade, repurposed attack on the first original Death Star was exceptionally well done in CGI. Well, like you mentioned, it's a preferential choice. You don't have to like this. You might stick with the new ones and say, you know what, seeing more X-Wings in that particular scene actually adds to the effect. So, and I'm actually appreciate the fact that you're giving the fans an option, a chance to see both and see what's going on. But moving to the Return of the Jedi specifically, because that's the latest one, I had a couple of questions that I wanted to ask you. And the most curious and pressing questions that I had, I saw your brief reaction to Disney's 4K releases on their streaming service of the original films, and you were really excited about it. And I wanted to ask, were you able to extract and repurpose some of the footage from those specific releases in your own project?
Well, not the streaming releases, but about a year later, they actually released those same masters on UHD Blu-ray.
Right.
So I was able to source those
Mm-hmm.
as my main source
Mm-hmm.
for video, and now that's only for version 3.0. So
Mm-hmm.
for now, only Return of the Jedi.
Right.
Uh, but because those releases are 4K, I was able to do a 4K version. All the earlier versions were only
Mm-hmm.
720p actually, because and I had several reasons for this. Like at first, my computer was way too slow to even do 1080p
Ah, I
when I
see.
first started. So that was one of the reasons I did it in 720. Another reason, of course, was that the best source we had at the time was the 1080p Blu-ray, and 720p was a small downgrade from there.
Mm-hmm.
And the best source we had for the original footage was the aforementioned DVD.
Right.
So I just wanted the quality to sort of meet in the middle somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
We, of course, as a fan community, we did a lot to improve the quality of those DVDs. Uh, I could mention U2's project,
Mm-hmm.
which when you go to my YouTube channel, there's a whole sources, the specialized edition sources video
Mm-hmm.
where I describe all the sources I used for the older despecialized editions.
Mm-hmm.
But now that's the main difference between the older despecialized versions and the new one I just released for Return of the Jedi. And that difference is that it's all sourced from all actual 4K material.
Okay.
It's either the 4K Blu-ray or the 4K 77 fan restoration. I actually had access to like the raw files from them.
That's really
Uh,
cool.
right. So I was able to actually replace those parts that were changed in the special edition by actual 4K
Mm-hmm.
scans of the 35 millimeter uh,
Mm-hmm.
releases. But of course, these scans, they are done by fans and they're fantastic. I think for right now, for for Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back, they're by far the best option, even compared to Despecialized, because Despecialized is kind of aged by now,
Well,
like
right. It's a product of
technically.
its time, if you may say
Yeah,
so.
yeah. It's like I said, 720p, and
Mhm.
some of the and I was using the DVDs for removing the changes. So
Right.
definitely the 4K 77 and 4K 80, which is Star Wars and Empire,
Mhm.
are way better technically, even in terms of picture quality.
Now, a
And they're
question.
like the full original
Yeah.
experience. For Jedi now, that's a different matter slightly because the 4K 83, which is the 4K something something for Jedi. Uh, it's very high quality compared to the others as well,
Hmm.
but still it has some dirt and the colors are kind of, but that's also a matter of taste, but I think the colors are kind of muted.
Hmm.
I prefer Jedi especially. I recently saw a 35 millimeter print projected. Granted, it was the special edition, but from what I know, they really like tried to get the colors right for the special edition
Hmm.
35 millimeter projections or the prints.
Peter, I had,
And
before I
then
forget, I had this question in the contrast, in relationships to your earlier projects, which was Episode 4, A New Hope, and then Empire Strikes Back. Now, working on The Return of the Jedi in 4K, did it present any unique challenges? And were there ever like modern special effects that you kind of thought about leaving actually in your work?
no.
No.
No to the to the second question. Yes to the first in terms of course, like working in 4K,
Hmm.
it's just there's way more detail, so you have to really like be careful, like really check the details
Hmm.
because everything's visible. And of course, this time, since it was a little different working from a 35 millimeter source rather than like an official release at low quality, before I was doing more like upscaling of the lower resolution and trying to actually just replace the bits and reconstruct uh the shots in HD as much as possible.
Hmm.
But now I was working with a really high quality source, and the it was mostly about cleaning it up.
Uh,
So basically, I needed to. A lot of people will not like hearing this, but I had to degrain it quite a bit.
mhm.
But that's because the official Blu-ray is really, really degrained. So I needed to get it to about the same level of degraining so it wouldn't stick out.
Yeah, it totally
And
makes
then of
sense.
course, yeah, and then of course there was a lot of dirt and scratches, even though Team Negative One did a wonderful job cleaning it up. Uh, but that's compared to how dirty the original scans were. But it's still compared to the official Blu-ray, it was still quite dirty. So I had to do a lot of manual cleanup on it.
Yeah,
So most of the work went that way.
gotcha. Peter, to kind of like wrap up with this particular project and move on with our topics, I have one last one. It may be a little bit unexpected for you. I am personally a huge fan of the Ewok films.
Hmm.
And while they were also presented on the Disney Plus channel, where I actually saw them back on the DVD, do you
Hmm.
ever plan? Now, obviously, they don't feature any modern day special effects, but do you
Right.
ever feel like you could go back and add something to those to enhance them, upscale them, modernize them a little bit?
Um, I don't know if that's a thing for me to do. Like
Right.
modernizing them in terms of like adding new effects, that's definitely not something I would do.
Hmm.
There could be a possibility of doing like an AI upscale. I just recently got into like this area of video editing is like AI creation and AI
Hmm.
upscaling. Uh, so that could be possible, but I don't know. I think there are a lot of fans who do stuff like this. Even like the Star Wars Holiday Special been like cleaned up and released.
That's a
So I
curiosity.
think someone else will probably do it in time.
Hmm.
So
Are you a fan of them by chance? You don't care for them much?
uh, I have I've seen only one, and that
Mm.
was as a kid, and I haven't seen them since.
Hmm.
So I don't know if I'd like them
Yeah, they
now.
present to me there's just that perfect innocent time when we used to go and see American films in cinema now in the
Right.
early 90s in theaters. And you saw all these like cheesy, interesting Western films. It was just fun. But guys, partially what I and Peter wanted to touch up in this podcast, kind of like touching ground again and then, having a company of each other to talking Star Wars and chilling we wanted to look at the entirety of Disney era Star Wars in retrospect. Right, because for now, for the time being, we don't have any shows. We have Acolyte coming up this year. But in between, kind of like discuss briefly, how do we feel about sequel trilogy now that it has landed and we had a couple of years to process all that stuff, all the current TV shows, if our opinions have changed, because, you know, our thoughts and feelings are never static. Sometimes you react to something, sometimes you fall, like I recently did, you fall into a certain echo chamber and all you do is hearing other people's very, very harsh opinions, and you kind of like regurgitate and reiterate it all the time. Are we hearing the sirens? Are we good there? I was about to pause it, but that's fine. I actually did a pretty good job on my microphone now. I'm like canceling out all noise.
Right.
So it's
No,
pretty
I couldn't
cool.
hear anything.
Really?
Yeah, no.
Wow. Okay. All right. Pat myself on this
Actually,
shoulder.
my apartment is
Yeah.
right on the street that leads to like the biggest hospital in Prague. So there's sirens quite
Oh
often
man.
as well.
So we can relate to each other. That's New York 24/7, man. That's tough. But anyway, on to the sequel, guys. When The Force Awakens drops, I do remember your general response and reaction to it. But what were your expectations for it? Here's the first Star Wars film in over a decade. What did you want to see?
Um, well, I was hoping for a little more originality,
Mm-hmm.
but I was mostly cautiously optimistic, I would say, from the
Mm-hmm.
trailers and everything looked uh at least like from the trailers, it was clear that they got the look right.
Right. Yeah, that's the
Uh,
first thing that was in everybody's mind, right? And for
yeah.
me, when I saw that first trailer, when we get to see Johnny Boyega and Daisy Ridley, really what captured my attention was the very raw and visceral emotions on screen. Because that's something that I personally felt was lacking in the prequels. It was kind of very, very robotic, like, you know, acting and the way that very talented actors were delivering lines. In some scenes, they were phenomenal and they got progressively better, especially with their Revenge of the Sith. I mean, there's some absolutely captivating emotional moments there, but particularly in The Phantom Menace, a lot of scenes were just like, we're talking here, we're moving the story forward. Now, in this trailer, in TFA, something struck and we were both kind of like, yes, yes. I was overzealous, man. I was so excited for it. But now looking at this whole trilogy that came out, and, you know, we got the Rise of the Skywalker, and that's how the story ends, folks. What would you say is each movie's accomplishments and shortcomings?
Um, well, for The Force Awakens, I would say is the best of the three.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Uh, it definitely, like, I remember I went to see it in the theater like 5 times,
Hmm.
which I didn't do for any of the other Disney Star Wars films. Of course, the main reason was it was like the first Star Wars movie in theaters for like what, 10 years at least?
Yeah, the
What
hype was
year?
crazy.
When did it come out?
2005 was the release of the
Yes.
Revenge of the
Revenge
Sith, and 2015, so 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years. So yeah, it was the first Star Wars movie in theaters in 10 years. Well, not counting the
The Clone Wars one, right?
Clone Wars
Hmm.
movie, but yeah, so I was super excited just for that.
Hmm.
I think they got the even though it was basically a remake of the original Star Wars, it was a good one. I
Hmm.
mean, they got the feeling right.
Hmm.
It was exciting. It was adventurous. Uh, the acting was very good, I thought. Uh, and even the script was basically Star Wars, so like you can't really go wrong there.
Yeah, yeah.
And so yeah, I really enjoyed that one, and I still do occasionally, which is not something I can say for the other two.
Mm.
I only I think I saw The Last Jedi like twice since I
Just to
saw it.
make sure, right?
Uh, yeah, well, I mean, like rewatching it later, like
Hmm.
and that was usually with someone who hasn't seen it yet. And then
The
Rise of Skywalker.
Skywalker.
Rise of Skywalker, I only saw once after seeing it in theaters. It came out on some streaming platform. I
Yeah.
think it wasn't even Disney Plus at that point.
Hmm.
Because we didn't get Disney Plus here for quite a while. Uh, so we've only had it for like the last couple of years or something.
Hmm.
Uh, so I think it came out on HBO or Netflix or something. So I decided to give it another chance, and like it was basically a chore to get through.
Yeah. With me, I would say I would agree with you that the all of my friends that I took to see The Force Awakens in 2015, there was like a group of 10 or 15 people of us. I bought like a whole line of tickets.
Yeah.
We obviously, it's hard to judge. That's why we're doing this retrospect podcast. When you're in the moment and
Yeah.
exhilaration and adrenaline rush is there, we all loved it. And immediately, right after theater, you circle each other in a group and you talk about it. We're like, well, yeah, there are key moments were too similar. We got the droids with secrets, blah, blah, blah. Luke is not even in the film. But generally, the response was very good. And I think people were very forgiving that, okay, it follows the same footsteps, same blueprint of
Yeah.
A New Hope. But it's, I guess, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The formula works. It stuck together pretty well. It was a neat package. Unlike you, I actually loved The Last Jedi.
Hmm.
I really enjoyed it. I really like what they were doing with Luke Skywalker, this unfamiliar Luke. It's like, hey, what? He's this fallen hero, like he's hiding
I
away. What's
think
going on there?
I
Right?
think we probably discussed this the last time as
Right,
well,
we
but
did, because
uh,
it kind of paralleled the what I read in the books a lot. But now I'm slowly turning around, and I still enjoy it, guys. I'm not going to dramatically change my opinion just because so and so said online. But now I see the other side too, and why a lot of fans just want this basic escapist story that we want our knight in the shining armor again, right?
yeah. And the thing is, like, it's inconsistent with the character that we know from the original trilogy. And I was gonna say I actually liked The Last Jedi when I first saw it.
Hmm.
I didn't like a lot what they did with Luke, but the rest of it I thought was pretty good. But then upon rewatching it, I found it more like boring than the first time I saw it. And
Which
like
is
some of
fair,
the
you know.
parts, like the casino planet and all that,
Yeah,
like
the
it
Cantabite
drags.
and
Yeah,
jumping on
yeah,
the
yeah,
horses. We're gonna
yeah.
liberate, the
Uh,
planet.
and also, like, I think the biggest fault of The Last Jedi is how badly it set things up for the next movie. I think I don't even fault I don't even fault J.J. Abrams that much for how bad The Rise of Skywalker was,
Right.
because what he had to work with was very limited.
Hmm. Yeah, it was
Uh,
quite incoherent. Now looking back at it, I
yeah,
think for me, what brought down and unraveled the entire trilogy, the potential of it,
yeah,
is the Rise of Skywalker, where you now see all three movies next to each other. You see how much dissonance is between each story and characters. And when you look at the Rise of Skywalker, I didn't like the Return of the Emperor. I always thought it's a very cheap trick in books or movies to try to revive a dead villain.
sure.
I
Um,
thought that demystifying Rey Skywalker and giving her a background that she's a Palpatine now, but she's not going to follow her bloodline. Or she needs to sign up with the Skywalker family to feel significant about herself. I felt all of it was unnecessary. She really worked great as this unknown child, this
yeah,
hero
yeah.
who is finding herself in this universe. I felt it was such a strong concept, but when you have a bad landing, it kind of sours the entire experience for you.
But the whole time I thought she was gonna be like someone important, but not in terms of like who's her parents or whatever, but like maybe I thought maybe she was like the strongest student at Luke's academy, and then they somehow erased her memory and put her on that desert planet
That's
to
actually awesome.
Yeah, to like hide her from Kylo Ren because
Hmm.
he was hunting down all the Jedi from Luke's academy. And I thought that was gonna be the reveal, and that would actually explain all the Mary Sue stuff as well.
Yeah.
Like, how did she know how to do all this?
Hmm.
That, but it didn't work
It didn't
out
go
that
that route. Yeah, especially when you look at, I have two of the three making of art books of the first and the second film, or
right.
episode, 7 and 8, and you look at all of this brainstorming ideas and concept art, and think there are so many juicy, interesting ideas, but because of the insanely rushed project that was TFA, that Disney was like 2 years, you have to do it, you have to do it. JJ, I'm rewriting the script. All of these elements piling up together really didn't do its service. And you
Yep.
end up with something that's like, scrap everything, we're just going to repeat the original film because that's the time limit. Because there's a lot of also, rocky, like underwater stones that get in your way sometimes that as a filmmaker you can't foresee.
Yeah, that's true. Uh, yeah, I think the biggest problem of the sequel trilogy is that there was no plan.
Hmm.
Like George Lucas, I think he exaggerates a bit about like how much of a plan he had for
Yeah,
like the entire
a
saga
little.
right from the beginning, but he
Yeah,
definitely had some sort of notion of where he wanted the story to go.
yeah,
Whereas I have a feeling that with the sequel trilogy, they have no idea whatsoever.
yeah.
Like when they just made The Force Awakens and then they gave it to another director who just came up with his own ideas,
Hmm.
disregarding completely that there would be another movie after it. So I think what it needed was a sort of a showrunner, yeah, like you get in on TV shows, who would like oversee that everything lines up.
George.
Yeah,
George,
yeah,
don't look. Look, he's right
yes,
there. He was willing to do it. But sometimes the fans who are so adamant about the mastery of George Lucas, which we all love. I mean, he's the grandpa. He's the storyteller. We all adore and worship him. But when fans try to, no, he started through in here and here. I mean, when you look at Luke, Han, and Leia and The New Hope, which is basically a love triangle, and
yeah,
then you look at their kiss, a diversionary kiss in Empire Strikes Back, come on. And like, I'm your father. And like, are you serious? Like,
yeah,
but it was so meditative. And it was adding up to this sculpture that they're slowly and carefully planning out and say, what if we do this? What if we turn this little sequence on its head? And this guy who was the villain in the first movie, he's not going to be the father. That's our twist. They took their time. They were cooking it slowly.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's why you
yeah,
get this timeless classic on your hand.
yeah.
Peter, moving on to the TV shows, this is where I'm really, really excited kind of to pick your mind about this. First of all, look at sort of a general question to get ourselves a baseline. What is your essential requirement for a show versus a standalone movie?
Hmm. That's an interesting question because there are different types of shows. Like basically what the like you've got shows like Breaking Bad, which are basically like you have to watch them from beginning to end. They're telling one big story, basically a movie that's however like 100 hours long.
Hmm.
And then of course you get like episodic shows where it's a completely different set of rules.
Like Star Trek, yeah.
Yeah, Star Trek, or actually like I think they did this pretty well with The Mandalorian, at least
Hmm.
in the first season. Uh, and I think uh, for the shows that are like one big long movie, the rules aren't that different to an actual movie.
Hmm.
That's what the audience wants from it, basically, is like watching a grand big movie. Whereas with the episodic shows, they can be a bit more like
Like short stories, I would say.
yeah, yeah. I was gonna say lighthearted, but of course you
Hmm.
can have a lighthearted movie as well, so that's not really uh a thing. But like my favorite show of the Disney Star Wars so far was Andor.
Hmm.
And we discussed this last time, but
Oh, we're gonna get to it for sure.
yeah, but I think Andor did a great job at making a great show, but it wasn't necessarily great Star Wars.
That's a good point.
Yeah, like when you look at Star Wars, the original trilogy, it's pure escapism, and
Hmm.
it has always been pretty lighthearted, uh, and I so it was great for us who are like the original fans of the old Star Wars, because it was in the universe that we love, but it was a very interesting and adult story.
Hmm.
But it definitely wasn't a good show for kids. You're
Yeah,
like
absolutely. I
you're
agree with
not
you. I
gonna
think
watch.
one bit of a criticism that fans have, and I sort of understand, is that, like you mentioned, here is your space fantasy umbrella of Star Wars storytelling, and here's a show which daringly did what was possible only in books before. Because, when you pick up a Star Wars book, it doesn't necessarily appeal to the same exact mass audience that goes and checks out a movie on the big screen. That's not to say there is few of Star Wars readers. There's a lot of us, but it's, once again, it's not the same demographic. It's not the same space of people. And you can sort of play around and experiment. I almost make a comparison to the animated shows from Star Wars versus live action. In
Right.
animated shows, you get more room to play around. Like, what if make it a little bit more mature and gritty here? Let's slow down over there, bring it back to children. You have that wiggling room. With TV shows, especially with high budgeted shows, you got to nail it the first time. You got to cover as much fan base as you possibly can. And I agree with you. I totally understand some fans and say, well, like, yeah, it's potentially a cool show. Call it like Space Partisans or Freedom Fighters on
Right.
Planet X, and then maybe it would have been much better received. But as a Star Wars brand, like, I don't know about this, and people questioning it, I totally get it. But I think both you and I responded to its very mature and layered storytelling and nuance and subtext and the skill with which the filmmaker was able to put a character on screen and not necessarily blurt out the entire plot or the meaning behind the scene. And you get it. You look at these characters like, oh crap! Remember that little scene where Andor is brought to the planet to start their stratagem, how they're gonna raid the Imperial outpost. Just the interaction between these people. Nobody ever stands out. Nobody's there just as a little prop in the background. Everybody has a say. Everybody contributes. And when things start going, crazy and action blows up and you losing character over here and over there, you care. It's like, oh my God, this is what I've been waiting for. It has emotionally matured. It has narratively matured into this thing which we've all been waiting for.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh,
Go ahead.
and then my second favorite Disney show was actually the first season of Mandalorian,
Yeah,
which is
without argument.
basically the opposite of of what Andor is. It's episodic, it's fun, it's lighthearted.
Hmm.
Uh and that's actually more in the vein of the original Star Wars. And I enjoyed that very much. I think like and you probably will have a different view because you're more about like the overall overall story and the
Right.
EU the books and everything. For me, like I enjoyed I enjoyed the first season because it had uh very little links to other shows and stuff.
Hmm.
And I don't like that now they're trying to like interlink all the shows. Like you get Ahsoka in this show and Boba Fett in that show.
Marvelize it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
For me, it just becomes kind of and that's why I kind of actually that's probably the biggest reason I kind of gave up on the shows. I'm
Hmm.
still planning on watching them at some point, but I haven't even seen the third season of Mandalorian.
Hmm.
I haven't seen Ahsoka, and that's because I feel like it kind of feels like a chore. Like I have to watch this in order to watch that, and
Right, right.
So I think the last Star Wars show I saw was probably Kenobi, which
How?
I
Oh,
did.
we're gonna get to it right now. Peter, that will be a very interesting discussion. But I wanted to quickly circle back to Mandalorian, and I think what it accomplished spectacularly was just awesome, balls out action.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
really
yeah. Oh yeah,
spectacular, fun, Wild
totally.
West standoffs. Cad Bane is there. Even if you don't know this character, that's just there. Enjoy it. Unplug. But
Yeah,
to me, being a picky nerd story follower that I am, I don't necessarily need to connect it to all other stuff that I enjoy. As a matter of fact, like you, I liked when Mandalorian didn't introduce known characters. When it was
yeah,
trying to chart its own path in the
yeah,
galaxy far away, and not necessarily he's not butting heads with other known characters. But what
yeah,
really irked me, it was really hard to follow, is in order to work with the source material, you need to first understand it. The X-Men First Class is such a phenomenal example, is because the showrunner, the director, he knew exactly what makes the X-Men franchise work. He knew the original story by Stan Lee, and yet he kind of repositioned little story segments here and there, and it still works because he knows the source. In this case, you're showing me in Mandalorian this vigilante, these remorseless, hardcore killers. And by the end of the first or second episode, he's like swooning over this child that he wants to protect. Really, that's Mandalorians. And then that trend continues in the book of Boba Fett, where I will rule with respect. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, okay, he
yeah.
looks like Boba Fett. It's the same actor. Like, are we sure? Are we in the same? So that kind of like nerddom of myself was really, really hard to detach. And like you, when Mandalorian started mushing all of these characters together, I really fell off.
Yeah,
But
that
what
was
had,
just in the second season. They
yeah,
started bringing in characters from the Clone Wars, which I haven't watched the entirety of, so I didn't know those characters.
yeah,
I get it, they're Mandalorian, so it kind of makes sense to put them in, but to me that was a bit of a put off. But
yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say to your point,
Mhm.
uh, I agree with you about Boba Fett. For me, the in the Mandalorian, I didn't mind it so much because sure he's like a cold-hearted killer uh in his job, but that we don't know his personality
Mm,
yet. So like it's not like all Mandalorians have to be the same,
true.
but Boba Fett has been pretty well established.
Yeah,
So I think I think they that was more distracting to me that they changed his character so much. And they
yeah.
tried to explain it away by him spending this time with the sand people, dancing with the wolves.
Yeah. If
Uh,
there's, established history behind the character, don't mess with it. Know
yeah,
how to navigate it. If all we knew about Boba Fett, he was this mask, this helmet
yeah,
in the original trilogy, and that's it, then do away
yeah.
however you want with the character. He's a clean slate. We don't know anything about him. Then you don't really have a say in, well, I
Yeah,
don't like it because it's not like
exactly.
that. You
That's what they
either,
did with the
yeah.
Mandalorian, and it worked.
Hmm.
Also, of course, it didn't help that Boba Fett now looks like he ate his way out of the Sarlacc pit. Which
Okay.
no
This might be a
criticism
little bit
towards
tough for a younger
actor
crowd to digest. We're going there, man.
yeah. It's of course, I mean, he's so much older than he was
Yeah.
in the prequel trilogy. And that I think is the problem. Like recast, like
Yeah, yeah.
it's not
But to Tamara
necessary.
Morrison, we gotta give him credit. He really, really prepared for it. He did his
Oh yeah,
best. He knocked it out of the park. I
yeah,
love the guy. But Peter, the juicy part, the Kenobi show.
right.
We have the story, this premise of returning the original legacy cast from Star Wars prequels, and a rare opportunity where the actors still look fit. They're pretty
Yeah.
much looking like their counterparts, and you get your chance to expand on these characters. And we get a story of let's rescue Leia, because apparently Kenobi and Leia, they're like best buddies now. Is that kind of story thread plausible in your mind at all?
Well, not in the context of the other movies. Like from the I mean, we don't get a lot of dialogue in the original Star Wars concerning the past, but we get enough for this not to make sense.
Hmm.
Even like uh Vader's line, when I left you, I was but a learner, but now I am the master. Like, and it sounds like they haven't met since he was a pupil.
Exactly.
Already the prequels kind of messed with that, but
Yeah.
having them meet again 10 years later, it just doesn't really work.
It's a very tough discussion with uh, diehard prequel fans, and I've had quite a few of them on the podcast. And you have to be friends enough and respect each other enough to see a difference of opinion. I understand it where this Star Wars is this 6-part, one unified franchise story for you, and that's it. You know, it just makes sense. And then there is chaps like us who are like, oh, I grew up and, you know, these conversations between Kenobi and Luke in his adobe in Tatooine, and later on Dagobah, and later when Luke reveals his background, who their real mother was, you know, in Andor Moon, they're ingrained in our brain. I could repeat these same lines in my sleep. And when you have this built fantasy in your mind, which the movie has built made for you, you know, it's hands-free. I'm not behind the wheel. It's George Lucas. He gave me this story. And now you're telling me it's not that, it's something different. We see that dissonance, but unless you're willing to have a conversation for it, you know, and it's no disservice to the prequel fans or the prequel movies. By all means, guys, enjoy and love them. I repeat time and again, not to get a score, you know, a mark checked with the fans. I watch prequels all the time. I do watch it all the time. But you see that narrative dissonance, and you see how things don't really quite match. But Peter, did you enjoy seeing Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen reprise the role?
Um, I did actually. Like, that was the only part of of that show that I thought was I was or that I was actually really looking forward to even before. Like, I thought, even though I'm no big fan of the prequels, they have some merits to them.
Absolutely.
And Ewan McGregor was definitely one of them. Like, I thought he was great in the role. What I think, looking back, like, their roles, his and Qui-Gon's role
Hmm.
should have been reversed in the Phantom Menace. Not in terms of him being a pupil and master, but in terms of their characters. I think
Ah.
it would make way more sense for Kenobi to be the hot-headed one who wanted to train Anakin and saw this potential in him,
Hmm.
and for Qui-Gon to be the voice of reason, and then Qui-Gon gets killed, so Kenobi gets his way, because that plays way better into his later regret. Because
That's a really interesting observation. You know, I never thought of it this way.
as it
That's
is
awesome.
now, it's basically like he was just sort of thrown into teaching Anakin
Hmm.
because he made a promise to his master, but so it wasn't really his own choice. He was basically against it from the beginning.
Right.
Uh, so I think it would be way better for if he was the one who wanted to do it, and they became friends.
Hmm.
But that's actually like a whole longer discussion
Yeah.
about how the
But you,
prequels could have been better,
yeah, yeah,
uh but we got the prequels that we got, and still, like, Ewan McGregor was great in them,
yeah.
especially in Revenge of the Sith. And I thought he also, like, captured Alec Guinness really well. Like, he could be Alec Guinness as a young man.
Hmm.
So it I thought that worked very well. So I was really looking forward to seeing him reprise the role. Uh, Anakin, I kind of knew he would probably just be a cameo.
Hmm.
So uh, that I wasn't really looking forward to that much. But I think he did a really good job in the Kenobi show.
Yeah, I was really,
Oh,
I was happy for Hayden Christensen
yeah,
just
yeah.
being welcomed back into the fandom and enjoying the spotlight, which I always thought he deserves. I thought he was very charismatic and dashing and interesting in Revenge of the Sith, which after coming out of theaters, it felt the most like Star Wars to me. I came out satisfied. I still had
Right.
gripes here and there, but I was like, you know what? go home with it. This is the Star Wars today. Like, enjoy it. Have fun. Guys, we're going to do a little something here. Peter and I are going to skip discussing Ahsoka because you haven't seen it. So I haven't finished watching it. You know, little spoiler, it's the one that broke the camel's back for me. That's why I've been out of commission with my YouTube channel for like, you know, over half a year. But maybe we'll come back to it. But now what we want to do is, there's a new show on the rise coming out very soon. And Peter over here has not seen the trailer to it. So let's watch Peter's first world premiere reaction to Acolyte. I just want to really pick your brain to see what you would potentially hope to see from the show. So, shall we?
Close your eyes. Your eyes can deceive you. We must not trust them. Tell me what comes into your mind.
Life. Balance. I see fire.
Here we go. We'll do just a tiny bit of talking, guys, not to interrupt the viewing, but just make sure we don't get a strike.
Oh, right.
What happened?
I sensed darkness.
A little bit of Force Kung Fu there.
Yeah, where are the lightsabers?
This isn't about good or bad. This is about power. And who
I mean,
is
if
allowed to
anything,
use it.
we're getting the look of Star Wars, 100%.
What is that?
There they are.
June 4th. There you go. Disney Plus. All right, let us revert to our screens and we will hear Peter's first full reaction. Okay, we're back now?
Yep. Cool.
So, all I'm going to say is this is based heavily on the High Republic books that have been coming out, and the show is happening 80 years before the prequels. What are your thoughts, Peter?
Well, it has very prequel vibes.
Really?
Yeah, like the even the action, like all the kung fu stuff, which I get, like it's based in the prequel era or before it, but
Right.
the same. So it's quite obvious that it's gonna look like the prequels. I don't know. I can't say I'm super excited for it.
Based on one trailer, obviously, right?
Yeah. I might give it a chance.
Yeah.
We don't really know that much about it, at least from this trailer. So, who knows? But at least I'm kind of glad that it's something different. Like what we've been getting was all kind of samey.
Right. I think, yeah, it could definitely be a great asset to the show. You know, if it's different in a good way that kind of separates itself visually, narratively, in terms of what sort of characters we see on screen, that'd actually be a good thing for Star Wars. That's maybe exactly what it needs. I have my reservations. Once again, I'm a huge fan of the books, but I've never been the sort of fan who wants exact replica of what's in the books presented on screen, because also the timelines don't quite match. This is an entirely new segment of the High Republic. But I don't know, something about the action and the Force Kung Fu, and I'm very particular about wire work. It's such a, art form. Unless you have Wu Ping directing your Matrix movies, you got to be really careful with it. I've seen a couple of modern martial art shows that they had, like in the movie, the Shang-Chi one. I really don't dig them. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Something about the action aesthetic that doesn't appeal to me. I grew up with the old school 70s and 80s kung fu's, Jackie Chan, and later on 90s, Jet Li and Donnie Yen. Those were masters of work. Here, I don't know, just like yourself, I'll keep optimistic, cautiously optimistic. Let's see if, this is another great show. That's a great surprise to us.
The kung fu was actually what mainly, like, other than the aesthetic, obviously, like, you get the same costumes and the set designs and stuff, but that's what was the most, like, screaming prequel action to me. Because they did all the, like, kung fu sword fighting. It was even way more here. So I guess they're like it kind of makes sense, I guess. Like, the Jedi were always, like, kind of samurai warriors, or so
yeah, and the Force is like cheese that now in this fantasy space they get to project and use it as a fighting tool. Peter, there are also other projects in the work. I don't know if you are or aren't aware of them. There are two of them that I have very specific questions about. We have the Skeleton Crew, which is slated for sometime this year. The details are very scarce. They're not even worth going over in detail. Obviously, we're getting a Mandalorian Grogu movie that's coming out. But there's two projects that I wanted to ask you questions about. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with Patty Jenkins, who directed the Wonder Woman 1 and 2. And she got to fame, I think, with her movie Monster from 2012. Then she got popularity. She's directing a Rogue Squadron movie that is supposed to take place, I think, during the original trilogy. What do you think about that? Is there potential?
There's definitely potential. Like, I really liked the first Wonder Woman movie. I thought the second one was really bad, so it's very
double-edged sword.
Yeah. There's potential, but there's also potential for it to be really bad. So until we see something more, I'm gonna reserve judgment.
Yeah. Sometimes, you feel that a great film is the genius of one person. In the context of our conversation, maybe George Lucas or other sci-fi like James Cameron. But then you also understand all the contributors to a single vision of a director, the artists, the script writers, the music composers, special effects guys, and so forth, which bring the magic to it, which for some reason it's very, very hard to replicate. So like you said, it could be a great hit or a misfire.
Yeah.
And there's one more question that I have. There's a new Star Wars movie which is in production, which will cover the earliest origin years of the Jedi, 20,000 years in the past, called, I don't think it even has a name, but James Mangold is attached to the project. Now, this is the man who directed Logan, and it's also the man who directed the latest Indiana Jones movie, The Dial of Destiny. Based on these two films, based with your familiarity with the director, what do you think? What's going to happen there?
It's pretty much the same thing as with Patty Jenkins. One great movie, one crap movie. So we just don't know.
Oh my God. Are we brothers separated at birth? But what happened, man? Like, have you seen the Dial of Destiny in theaters? Did you go to check it out?
Yeah, I saw it. I haven't. I actually, like, I read the reviews and I didn't even bother seeing it in the theaters. I only watched it when it came out on Disney Plus. But yeah, I don't know, man.
Like, what happened?
I liked the first 20 minutes with the.
I didn't even like that. It was so on the nose CG, and you want to root for Harrison Ford for reprising the role. And obviously, all the artists. Once again, we're not disparaging the VFX guys. They're working with technology which is available today, and I mean, in some parts, it's damn near scary realistic. Yeah. But the entire package it's got to sell itself to you. And it didn't. Right. Like, it could tell every step of the way in every scene is pretty much CGI. But it did feel the most Indiana Jones like that first 20 minutes.
Exactly. Like the not the de-aging so much, even though I thought it was one of the best to date. For example, in well, that wasn't de-aging, but in Rogue One when they did Tarkin, that this was miles ahead.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it's definitely moving in a direction where soon we won't be able to tell.
Oh, I don't
But
want that, man. I don't want CGI to improve it,
yeah,
Recast the actors. That's where I stand.
yeah. But the scene itself, if it was shot with actual young Harrison Ford, that was really fun and felt like the old Indiana Jones films.
Yeah.
Uh, the rest, not so much. I don't even know why. Like, well, for one, Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character,
Hmm.
I found extremely annoying.
That his
Uh,
sidekick, his friend.
sorry.
Well, which character are you talking about? The one that was his sidekick, the other professor?
Oh, no, no, no. The his niece or whatever.
Oh, right. The lady, yeah, the female.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, how some fan critics call her lady boss. They need to fill the quota. Put
Yeah.
super strong female. I didn't have as much problem with her as it's just unraveled after for the 20 minutes. I have my suspicion, which I'm going to share with you and our audience. When there's a specific scene when Indiana Jones, he has that little brush with hippies like rocking the music, and he's like, "Hey, keep it quiet in there," and he goes on the train. And there's something about men landing on the moon. I think something about the space shuttle. You see the signature detail and nuance of James Mangold that he masterfully demonstrated in Logan. And magically, that style evaporates. It's only present in like a handful of little scenes. I have my personal suspicion that James Mangold's vision for this film was sabotaged. Disney basically hacked it to pieces. They're like, no, you're not putting this. Highlight this character. Do this with that character.
Yeah.
And being a very gracious and talented and knowledgeable how to navigate Hollywood, he basically shut his mouth. He's like, okay, let me just take my paycheck, go celebrate, sell the movie. And that's because you see it. If you understand filmmaking, if you understand storytelling, there's a couple of moments there. I'm like, holy mama, what could have been with this film? Just let the guy direct. Look at his Logan movie. He made a timeless classic out of your generic popcorn flicks.
Yeah.
How do you interrupt this guy?
Yeah. And even the action scenes were very fake looking and B kind of over the top, confusing at times, not very well made. And I think it's I've heard this about a lot of the Marvel films where they get some unknown indie director and give them the movie, uh and then but they don't actually let them direct the action scenes at all.
Yeah.
They have like separate like directors, stunt coordinators, whatever, who actually do all the action, and the director only gets to direct like the dialogue scenes and stuff. So maybe
Unless your name is as reputable as James Cameron, he gets to do whatever the heck he wants because
they wouldn't catch James Cameron dead.
Yeah.
Directing a Marvel movie, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, we're going to start slowly wrapping it up, and we wanted to touch on our final subject because we made you a promise that we'll show you how to cure your Star Wars fatigue. Peter, obviously the fans and we have seen your immense collection of Star Wars VHS and DVD tapes, but do you consider yourself like a diehard Star Wars fan?
Not anymore, really. Like I'm a big because to be a diehard Star Wars fan today, it sort of means following all this all this new stuff, which I just kind of lost my taste for it. And to be honest, I don't even watch the old films that often anymore. Like maybe once a year. And then usually just with someone who hasn't seen them, or because and it's not that I don't enjoy them anymore, but I've seen them so many times that it kind of loses its luster after a while. That anything would,
And
like
adult life takes, priorities,
yeah,
right?
yeah. But even in terms of just entertainment, like I'd rather watch something else I haven't seen yet, or maybe haven't seen that many times.
Hmm.
So I still love Star Wars, and for me, of course, like Star Wars was a huge uh force in my life in general. Like I do the job I do right now because of Star Wars, pure and simple. I even as a kid, it made me interested in visual effects, and
Hmm.
then later, of course, through my work on Despecialized, I got into the industry. So for me, like Star Wars will always have a very special place in my heart. Uh, but it's just not something I watch regularly anymore.
Hmm. Gotcha. Um, the question I had is, you know, how do you fight your own boredom? Like when you're bored with stars, you don't want to watch it anymore. You don't want to work on your Despecialized. It's so great. I've been doing this one scene, one shot, and oh my God, my files got deleted. Somebody, wife and some friends are calling. What's going on? How do you combat it?
Um, that's a
It's a loaded question.
that's well, for one, of course, like the by being in contact with other fans,
Mhm.
that that always fans the flames.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, because knowing that there are people who are waiting for it always it gives me such inspiration. And even though it's taking way longer than it used to, because I like the first version I made, I would say it will be almost 15 years possibly
Holy
since
man,
I made
time
the
flies.
first version. For sure, yeah, it must be. It was like 2009 or something. So
Hmm.
that
I think I learned about your project about like 2010 or 12, right there.
yeah, yeah. So so yeah, after 15 years of of working on it, that
uh, Peter, another question. Um, Outside of Star Wars, any other sci-fi books and movies you check out? Like, did you check out Dune or Rebel Moon, maybe?
I haven't seen Rebel Moon yet. I
Hmm.
haven't heard very good things about it, but I watched. I'm totally spacing out on
Dune.
the. No, no, I'm on the name of the director, Rebel Moon.
Zack Snyder.
Zack Snyder.
Yeah.
That's so. Uh, yeah. So I actually saw Zack Snyder on Joe Rogan,
That was
and
awesome.
yeah, that was great. And I really admire the guy, even though like some of his movies I'm not a big fan, but I really really admire him. And I, I what he said there was that he actually made like uh an R-rated version of Rebel Moon that will be a very different experience. And he basically made this version for the studio.
Hmm.
So um, I think I will just hold out on watching it until he really
That's a
releases
great idea.
R-rated version, because I do believe it could be much much better, because they like we saw it with Justice League.
Oh my
Like
God. I mean, the
they put
Snyder
all
Cut,
these
there's no comparison.
yeah, yeah. The studio put all these restrictions on, and I believe even if he stayed with the movie back then, it wouldn't be that much different from what we got from Joss Whedon, because
Yeah.
the studio wouldn't let him make it different, and only because fans wanted the Snyder cut, they gave him the freedom to actually do the
Yeah,
Snyder
all the
cut.
stars aligned, right? In that
Yeah, yeah.
project.
Uh, and like to be honest, I still think even the Snyder Cut is not a great movie, but it's a vast improvement over the studio interfered with
Yeah.
versions.
I would say for a comic book genre, it's
Hmm.
probably one of my favorites.
Is
Knowing
it?
what the demands and criteria's action cinema fulfills. It's not
Right.
an Oscar generator. It's just fun escapism.
It was good. I just thought maybe like something in between the two versions would be the version for me.
Mhm.
Like make it a little shorter, maybe. Don't make it so dark.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and maybe like I like some of the jokes that Joss Whedon added to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like
I think, with Rebel Moon, I'll be curious to hear your thoughts on this, because I did get to catch it. I didn't think much of it. And once again, you kind of have to think a little bit. It's like, hey, is it just the director's fault? Maybe there's more things at play there that are outside of his control. And once again, he's being a very smart businessman and say, okay, I'll satisfy the studio over here. On my end, I'm gonna cook up a little project here. I'm gonna just blast it in your face, and you're gonna enjoy it.
Yeah. I'm hoping that it will be a good experience.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I'm a big admirer of
Same here.
him, and so yeah, I'm hoping to get some more good stuff from him. Like, to me, the best comic book movie of all time is Watchmen.
Yes. I knew you were gonna say it. I knew you were gonna say it. It's spectacular. Yeah. Logan, Watchmen, there, the Nolan's Batman trilogy is amazing.
So that's definitely like Zack Snyder, I know, is capable of making something really great.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking forward to his cut of Rebel Moon. And what was the other movie you mentioned? Oh, Dune.
Dune Part 2.
I haven't seen Part 2 yet, because I don't remember really what happened in Part 1, and I want to watch it again before I see Part 2, and I couldn't really find the time or actually the energy, because I didn't like it that much.
Oh, the first one?
Yeah, like it was visually awesome, and there were some great scenes, but as a package, I thought it was a bit boring.
It's very moody, very deliberately so, and it replicates the same monotonous storytelling from the book. All I'm going to say, Peter, I'm not even going to give you my reaction, because I'd love to hear your thoughts. Part 1 is more story heavy. Part 2 is more actions heavy. It's where all the sauce is. So that's all I'm going to say.
But actually, like, well done story, I prefer to action. Like, for example, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, like Fellowship of the Ring, by far my favorite. And then I didn't enjoy the Two Towers very much, because it was all action, and to me that got boring after a while. I did enjoy the extended edition of that, because they added a lot of story, like with Frodo and Sam, and also Treebeard and all that stuff. Like I really enjoyed those parts. So I prefer the extended version of that. And so it's not really about action and dialogue. It's just the pacing, I guess. That, like, Two Towers is a perfect example of where I find the extended version, even though it's like at least 30 minutes longer, I find it like better paced than the.
I only watch them in special cuts. I don't watch the regular ones anymore.
Yeah. So it's not really that, but but I was gonna say, like, Denis Villeneuve. I don't know how it does.
Denis Villeneuve or something.
Yeah, but I'm not that big of a fan of his work in general. Like, Sicario I enjoyed, but I didn't think it was all that. Like,
I think Arrival is his best movie to date.
That I was just gonna say, I didn't like Arrival.
See, guys, here you go. Two diehard fans, movie buffs, and something appeals to one person and does to the other. It doesn't mean that the movie doesn't have any merit. There you go. It's a perfect example.
Exactly. Like, to me, that's why I say I didn't like it. Like, it was very well received generally, so I suppose there's something to it, but
Right.
I didn't see it personally. Then the new Blade Runner movie, I actually worked on it a little bit, uh, and I
You
liked
worked
it.
on it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Visual.
What did you? Can you tell us what did you do?
Well, uh, I was just starting in UPP, the company I work at now, and so I was doing just some rotoscoping on
Nice.
uh uh and but if you go to upp.cz, you can actually watch our show reel on what we did on that movie. Actually, we worked on Wonder Woman as well on the first one. Uh,
Nice. That's
the,
awesome. I'm so glad that that your hobby led to a career. It's really awesome.
and I liked that movie, but again, I thought it could have been better paced.
Hmm.
Uh, so that I think that's my main problem with most of Denis Villeneuve's
Hmm.
movies. And it I guess it's a matter of taste because a lot of people seem to enjoy them. But I think like to me I can't I find them a little long and boring usually, even though they have some really great stuff in them.
Hmm.
Like I thought Arrival had a great idea, but it dragged a little, and then I didn't like the ending.
Hmm.
Uh, and the same with Blade Runner and Dune. Like I thought they had some really great scenes and amazing visuals, but
Hmm.
they dragged to
Yeah.
me.
Well, it is what it is. Guys, we're going to hopefully reconvene soon. We're not going to take half a year. If you're willing, Peter, I would be more than happy to have you along. Final question, guys. Here we go. How do you bring yourself back into Star Wars? What is it? What makes it special to you again?
Um, to me, usually it's when something new comes out that I find exciting, and I'm not talking about Disney. I'm talking like uh very recently 4K 80 came out. So that was the last one that was still missing. And so now I can watch The Empire Strikes Back, which most will agree is the best Star Wars film.
Yeah.
Uh, I actually like it about the same as the original Star Wars because the original Star Wars I enjoy for being a complete story, whereas Empire it needs a beginning and end.
Hmm.
Movies, it's just on its own, it just doesn't work as well, but it has some of the best scenes and dialogues and acting of all the Star Wars films. And I'm super happy that I can enjoy it in its purest form now. So yeah, that's something that got me really excited uh in the last couple of months or so
That's
about.
awesome. Well, for me, I'm a huge like gaming nerd. I like reading. For me, it's always going back to and checking out the unfinished books that I can look forward to. So there's always a backlog of things I can revisit. I love checking out new video games when they come out, and working on YouTube videos, coming back to the channel once again, speaking to my friends, getting that excitement going. And once again, I don't have to like everything new. I don't have to praise everything old like it was like a golden mountain. I can pick and choose what I like. And going at your own pace and not rushing to cut a next YouTube review just so you could get 25 likes or something. That's what makes me enjoy. Going at my pace, going outside, having fun. When I feel like it, I'm going to pick up a Star Wars book. I'm going to read it.
Yeah.
Well, Peter, thanks a lot. It's been a pleasure talking. It's been really awesome. Guys, if you enjoyed Peter's work, please follow him. I'm going to drop all the relevant links in the video description below. Peter, if you have any last words for our fans for today, and we'll part here.
Well, all I'm going to say is may the Schwartz be with you.
Thanks a lot, Peter. We'll see you later, guys. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.